Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday morning, March 9th. A lot to talk about this morning. We have a couple of systems that will impact the Mid-Atlantic region, the Northeast U.S. over the next several days. One on Friday into Saturday, and the second one from later Sunday into Monday. And actually, that second one could continue to impact the Northeast U.S. all the way into the day on Tuesday. California will continue to get pounded away with storm after storm over the next several days. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. First of all, in terms of temperature pattern over the next couple of weeks, we've been emphasizing this high latitude blocking that is taking place right now across Greenland, northern Canada. That followed a stratospheric warming event during the month of February, both of which are contributing to a colder than normal weather pattern going forward now for the next couple of weeks across much of the nation. This is a 2-meter temperature anomaly forecast map for the next week, going from today all the way out to March 15th from yesterday's ensemble run of the European model. All this below normal across much of the nation. Really, you have to go to New Mexico and Texas and maybe the Gulf coastal region and Florida to get above normal, again, on average for the next 7 days. Now, having said that, it is certainly more difficult to get snow this time of the year in places like the I-95 corridor region of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast U.S. Philadelphia, for example, has now reached a climatological high temperature of about 50 degrees. So really you have to get some 15 to 20 degrees below normal to have a chance of accumulating snow. Not saying it can't happen, not saying it won't happen, but it's certainly more difficult this time of the year. But again, the next week shows below normal conditions over much of the nation. Well, this may look like the same map, but indeed it's the next week, the following week here, March 15th all the way out to March 22nd, same kind of a map, 2-meter temperature anomalies. And this is perhaps even more impressive because this encompasses almost the entire nation, coast to coast, colder than normal conditions, again, from March 15th to March 22nd, as depicted by the ensemble run of the European model from yesterday. And as I've mentioned earlier, ensemble runs tend to smooth things out as you go farther and farther out in time. So the fact that this is so substantial for that time period, March 15th all the way out to March 22nd, is quite impressive indeed. Again, colder than normal conditions over the next couple of weeks across much of the nation. Again, contributed to by the stratosphere warming event in February that kind of led to a high latitude blocking event that is ongoing right now with higher heights to normal, higher pressures than normal across Greenland and northern Canada. Now, let's take a look at last night's Canadian model run from 0Z. And right now, I want to start off with the next 5 days, an accumulation of precipitation. This is liquid equivalent precipitation over the next 5 days, just to kind of highlight a couple things, and then we'll look at total snowfall over the next 5 days. First of all, California, again, and much of the West Coast will just get pounded away by storm after storm over the next several days. Look at all this precipitation and over the Sierra Nevadas. I mean, this will be in the form of snow, virtually off the scales here. This is 2 feet of liquid equivalent precipitation or more over the next 5 days, and significant rainfall of several inches of rain across California's coastline here and all the way up to Washington, Oregon, coastal areas as well. You'll hear a lot of stories about atmospheric river pineapple express over the next several days here across California and much of the rest of the western U.S. Meanwhile, eastern half of the nation, pretty wet as well, pretty active as well. In some cases, this will fall as snow, but a lot of precipitation in the eastern half of the nation as well. Certainly not quite as what they will receive in California over the next several days, but impressive indeed. Well, in terms of snowfall, this is the way it looks from last night's 0Z run of the Canadian model. A lot of snow basically across the northern U.S. over the next 5 days. And again, Sierra Nevada, unbelievable amounts of snow. This is, again, virtually off the scales here. Several feet or more over the next several days. adding on top to already an extremely deep snowpack in those higher elevations. Lake Tahoe region, all that area out west is just being pounded away by snowstorm after snowstorm. Those higher elevation locations, a lot of snow across the Rocky Mountain states, and really from the northern plains all the way to the interior Mid-Atlantic, Northeast U.S. Substantial snowfall over the next 5 days. Well, let's walk through the surface forecast maps from last night's zero-Z operational run of the Canadian model. Again, we have a couple of systems over the next 4 or 5 days impacting the eastern third of the nation, and California, the west coast gets pounded away too. A dry day today here in the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast U.S., but then we have low pressure by tomorrow morning will reach Ohio, and this is the primary initial low, and it looks like it'll tend to weaken at that particular time, tend to dampen, and a secondary will form. We'll see in a moment off the Mid-Atlantic coastline. Now, in the overnight model runs, one of the things that has changed a little bit is the arrival of the precipitation in, let's say, the DC metro region. It looks like it'll arrive earlier in the day than I anticipated a couple of days ago, maybe early to mid-morning hours across DC. That'll be in a little bit colder atmosphere, so a little bit better chance for snow, especially across the northern and western suburbs as this precipitation arrives in DC metro region tomorrow morning. It then trucks along here and moves into the southeastern part of Pennsylvania, likely as a mix of rain and snow. There's really going to be a back and forth of rain and snow in some of these I-95 areas on Friday and late Friday. Again, reaching the Philadelphia metro region, probably midday, early afternoon hours, and then late afternoon into New York City. Again, the most favored area for all snow, again, the interior, higher elevation regions of the Mid-Atlantic region, the Northeast U.S. This is the forecast map for tomorrow evening. And by this time, that initial primary low is weakening and a secondary starting to develop here. And we see by late Friday night, really takes over. This becomes the main player off the Mid-Atlantic coastline. Maybe some rain in southeastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey. But as this system starts to intensify at this time, it really, watch the millibar drop here, 996 to 984. This is the time period of I'm very interested in, and if there are going to be any surprises with this initial system here in the Mid-Atlantic region, in the southeastern part of New England, for example, it'll be late Friday night, Saturday morning. That is the time when this low will rapidly intensify, and you'll notice there's what we call an inverted trough extending from the center of the low back to the coastline. This is sometimes referred to as a Norlund trough. Again, it's kind of a trough axis that extends from the center of the low back to the west or northwest. And in this particular case, this sometimes enhances precipitation. In this particular case, that could mean a kind of an enhancement of snow in southeastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey. Something we'll have to watch for later on tomorrow night, especially into the morning hours on Saturday. Again, rapid intensification and an inverted trough could lead to last minute surprises in New Jersey, maybe even parts of eastern PA. Rain snow combination likely to change to snow as colder air starts to wrap around this system right in this fashion right here. So may have a mix of rain and snow, let's say in Philly late tomorrow, and that likely changes to all snow later on tomorrow night. Again, as this system intensifies off the coast, it'll pull in colder air into the system. It'll wrap it around from northwest to southeast, and you can see it change back to all snow in Philly, for example, later on tomorrow night, going into Saturday morning. So again, a very interesting time period. This system then starts to pull away, but slowly. There may be some lingering snow showers all the way into midday on Saturday, parts of eastern PA, New Jersey, maybe even down to the northeastern part of Maryland later on Saturday morning into midday hours on Saturday. Then we move forward that slowly pulls off the eastern seaboard out to the open waters of the Atlantic. And system number 2 starts to close in from the west to the east later Sunday. This is the Sunday evening forecast map, and here we go with system number 2. And it starts off here by Sunday evening, relatively weak low, but it really intensifies beyond this time period. There's a 1003 millibar surface low, and here we go. It again kind of moves into the Ohio Valley, and then a secondary kind of reforms over the Carolinas. So this is now by Monday morning, and it's inland enough that rain is the likely precipitation type. DC, Philadelphia, New York City, although certainly snow could be mixed in. Now, if this track were to change a little bit to the east, that could make a colder solution. Certainly time for things like that to happen over the next couple of days. In fact, storm system coming Friday into Saturday can change the atmosphere in a way that could impact what actually ends up happening Sunday night and Monday. So we'll really have to wait till the weekend to have a better handle on this second system. Then we go all the way into Monday midday. Notice the intensification starting to take place now down to a 995 low. Again, primarily rain, Philadelphia, New York City, DC. If this were to shift a little bit to the south and east, that could make it a colder scenario to the farther to the south and east, but we'll see how that evolves. And then it really intensifies. The potential does exist for some significant snow out of this across the interior sections of New England by the time we get to late Monday night, going into the day on Tuesday. The pressure gradient really tightens up here, and you'll have strong winds Monday night going into the day on Tuesday. Could even have snow showers all the way down into eastern Pennsylvania on Tuesday with very strong winds. And look at this, now down to a 983 millibar low. So something to closely monitor, not only over the next couple of days, but certainly over the upcoming weekend as well. This second system, Sunday into Monday, and even all the way into the day on Tuesday. Looking ahead beyond that, there are signs that could be another storm, a third storm, later next week. We'll talk about that over the next several days. So a lot going on. Generally, a colder than normal weather pattern setting up for the next couple of weeks across much of the nation, all set in motion first by a stratospheric warming event in February, and then high latitude blocking right now going on, and it will continue for the next several days. 2 storm systems in the immediate future for the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast U.S., Friday, Saturday, and then late Sunday into Monday, maybe even all the way into Tuesday. Meanwhile, the western part of the U.S., especially California, gets pounded away with storm after storm over the next several days. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.